Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Best Deck Ever. I'm the Rumham here on behalf of SuperMagicalCup, and we always try to find the coolest and hottest new decks in the metagame, and when we find one that really stands out to us, you know, the kind of decks that make you go, hooray! We decided to make a little video and highlight the coolest aspects of the deck so you can try it at home yourself. Well, guess what? Just this morning was a massive update to Lumberjack. Lumberjack has been all over the meta at the top levels of the ladder, and it just feels like a really strong deck. We wanted to pick out and show you a really cool Lumberjack deck that's jumped out to us. Today, we're going to use a deck from Apex Predator, who is one of the regulars in the Super Magical Cup, a member of Reddit Alpha, and one of our approved Super Magical contributors. He's an awesome player, a really great guy. Make sure to check him out on Twitter, and of course, give Reddit Alpha all the props every time you see him in tournaments. Apex Predator has taken one of the coolest decks, one of my personal favorite decks in the metagame, a double Mini-Pekka deck that I've called Triple Charger, and added yet another charging troop to it. With this update, Lumberjack moves as fast as a Hog Rider, and all four of these big, tough, melee charging units together, I'm calling a 4-horseman deck. Two of these cards, Dark Prince and Lumberjack, both receive buffs on the same day, and it makes sense to try them together in this already really cool deck. So let's jump in, take a look at a few different games, and see how this Lumberjack has really fleshed out this archetype from just a cool idea to a legitimate best deck ever archetype. So here we are, jumping right into a game. We're going to watch some of these games at a little bit of a faster speed so that, you know, you can see the really cool parts and the things that you need to take home from this. Now, this deck seems like it would be a very offensive deck because of all the tough melee troops in it, but in actuality, it's a pretty defensive deck. You try to get down your elixir collectors as quickly as possible, and then just sit back and defend. The huge advantage of this deck, which we'll see in about another minute or so of game time, actually there's a great example here. So check this out. If you just saw right there, the opponent spent 9 elixir, a miner, an ice spirit, and a prince all coming down the lane. The prince and another ice spirit, only 6 cost from Apex Predator, was able to hold off the whole push, leaving a pretty much full health prince behind. The key thing you're going to want to do with this deck is use your very awesome melee troops primarily as defensive tools to push back against Hog Riders, Giants, enemy princes, Mini-Pekkas, whatever, and what'll happen is the remaining troops that are left on the board become very powerful counter pushes, and you see it right here with this prince. Just used on defense, and gets pretty much the whole way there. Does a really good charge, hits it for, 1,500-ish damage, and that was all off of a 6-for-3 defensive trade. Apex gets down a second elixir collector. As you can tell, the deck really wants to pump up and this is a perfect example of what the deck wants to happen. It wants the opponent to put 10 elixir in the lane and come down at you, so you can use your really good defensive tools to survive the push and then counter push on its own. Let's see how this one goes. And here's another full health prince coming down the lane. Princess to help cover against any real small troops. There goes the Mini-Pekka. Go, go, go! Oh, well, he died, but you can see, even right now, look at the huge elixir advantage that Apex Predator has. He just had 10 elixir, even dropping a Lumberjack and an Ice Spirit on the board. He has 4 more elixir than his opponent. That's huge. Eventually, those elixir advantages are going to overflow into their opponent's side and really end up taking that tower. So here we go. Ooh, look at that charge. Rage will help characters charge up a little faster, and that was part of the reason why that Dark Prince was able to go all the way from Apex Predator's tower back to the other side. Another great example of how to use the Lumberjack in this deck, you see it right here. That tower goes down not just on the strength of the newly buffed Dark Prince, but on the synergy with Lumberjack. It's very common to put your princes, your Mini-Pekkas behind your King Tower and let them build up to a charge. Now you have the ability to either put Dark Prince in front to provide a AoE swing that'll clear out cheap units in front of it, or put a Lumberjack in front, because if the Lumberjack dies, he does always generate a rage spell, which helps the things behind it, as well as being a very efficient attacker on his own. Right there, the Lumberjack was played up front. Lumberjack ate the Ice Spirit and ended up dying, placing the rage down, which allowed the Dark Prince to charge, hit the tower, and then swing very quickly again and take it down. With only 15 seconds to go, that wraps the game up because there's no way that Andrews can take this thing down in the face of such a strong defensive deck. Great game 1 by Apex Predator. And here we have a game 2 against a Three Musketeers Giant deck. Now, Giant decks are all over the metagame, but it's really worth mentioning how good Double Princes and especially Lumberjack and Mini-Pekka are against Giants. If you look, that Giant's been pretty much killed before he even crossed the river because of the effectiveness of Prince and Lumberjack. Lumberjack, after the update, has about 286 DPS, which is similar to what you would see out of a Mini-Pekka, which has about 325 at tournament cap. Now, as you can see, we've got a pretty serious push coming down the lane here. Giant with the double Pekka, but Apex Predator has a ton of elixir from playing very defensive and getting just making good trades. Even though he loses the tower, he only spends 4 elixir on that other side. And once again, you can see the power of the Dark Prince. Now, check what happened there on the right. Lumberjack and Dark Prince went down. Lumberjack led the charge because he's very fast compared to Prince, who takes a little bit to charge up. The Lumberjack dies in front of the tower, leaving behind the Rage, allowing the Dark Prince to charge once again, hit multiple times, and knock that tower down. And once again, we're back at even, except Apex Predator has... Actually, no, they're about even. Nearly similar tower health and a pump down on both sides. Let's see how Apex Predator pulls this game out. So we've got, again, look at that. All 3 of those things should just rip through that Giant very quickly. But, oh man, what are you going to do about 3 Musketeers? He's going to have to take some other method to get there. Wow, very risky there, but the Mini-Pekka helps distract for the Ice Spirit. The Ice Spirit then goes in. You can see the Lumberjack and the Prince, all 3 of them taking a different lane. Lumberjack in the middle, Prince on the right, and Dark Prince on the left really splits up the opponent so they can't actually ever get there to defend. That Princess is free to just shoot over and over and over again. And almost another way to think about how those princesses are really affecting the game is that when Apex Predator gets these huge elixir advantages from his efficient defensive trades, he's converting that extra elixir into Princess. Since Princess never crosses the field, never puts herself in danger, he's allowing the stacking of princesses to sort of represent like, oh, I got 3 elixir ahead, Princess. If that Princess survives until the next time he's 3 elixir ahead, then a second Princess comes out. And that the ability of those princesses to get on the board and just fire over and over and over again creates this sort of overwhelming counter push that eventually is going to take down Gabo. And you see it again, those Giants just can't get anywhere because of the incredible strength of all of those melee attackers that you have in the deck. And sure enough, the counter push from that 3 Musketeers Barbarians push was enough to knock down Gabo and give Apex Predator the win. Now, it's important to note that it's not just old decks you have to go up against. There's all sorts of cool new Lumberjack ideas out there. This deck by Akasa has a really awesome opening. It throws the Lumberjack in as both a tank and sort of a suicide squad because when he dies, dropping the Rage allows that balloon to get really far ahead. So as you can see right now, Apex Predator starts the game very far behind. They're both at 7 elixir, except that Apex Predator has a pump that pretty much got poisoned out, and a tower that's only 600 health from dying. This looks really bad for Apex Predator early in the game, but you can see how powerful this deck is at coming back from early bad starts and how just offensively strong it is once it gets going. A little bit of a cycle. It's great that he gets down the other collector and forces his opponent to attack into him. That's one of the key things you got to remember in this deck, is that you are meant to pump up. You are meant to play your elixir collectors to pass to your opponent and force them to attack into you, because when they do so, you can get maximum value out of your Mini-Pekka, your Lumberjack, your Prince, those sort of cards. They're not the best cards to play at the river, because a Prince at the river can usually be countered for 4 or less elixir, giving your opponent a positive elixir trade. But if you use your Mini-Pekka, Princes, etc. to counter 5, 6, 7, 8 cost pushes of your opponent, then you sort of get them for free when they attack on offense. So you can see right here, using those defensive setups to create a very powerful counter push. Sure enough, Lumberjack, even though he goes down, actually, that's a great example of Lumberjack being good all on his own. He died after the Dark Prince died, so his Rage didn't contribute anything, yet he was still able to get the tower down significantly low because of how fast he attacks. Another built-up push, and here's another great example of a Suicide Squad Lumberjack. If you notice, a lot of times, again, people will play their Prince behind the King Tower to then play the Dark Prince up front. Really cool way to get all 3 attackers in this push by playing the double Prince combo behind the King Tower and then dropping the Lumberjack in front as they cross the river. The defensive Mini-Pekka, which would be used to kill the Princes, is actually going to instead kill the Lumberjack and then set up those Princes for even scarier push under the Rage. Here comes the Prince. Whoop! Full speed charge, and is able to take it down. Apex gets another triple charger move together here, and with the Zap and Princess clears it out. Where's the Lumberjack? Here comes Lumberjack for the final push. He runs up, he runs away from the minions, dies to the Mini-Pekka, gives an excellent rage buff to not just the 2 Princes with him, but all the other things played after, and the non-stop parade of those 4 Horsemen chargers is able to knock down Aksa and take the game. As you can see, most players are only going to play maybe 1 cannon, 1 guard, 1 or 2 cards that are really good against these sort of charging melee troops. When you have 4 in your deck, when half of your deck are charging troops, you eventually catch them where they don't have the defense for it, and you can just spam these charging troops until they can't deal with it anymore. So that was 3 great games by Apex Predators showing off this awesome new 4 Horsemen deck, which I think is the best deck ever. Well, that wraps it up for this edition of Best Deck Ever. Thanks again to Apex Predator for coming up with such a cool deck and sharing it with us. Make sure to check him out, and of course, subscribe to us here on YouTube, and check us out on Twitch at twitch.tv/SuperMagicalCup. Live, the best tournaments you're ever going to see for Clash Royale are every Saturday at noon Pacific time. See you live.